Hi, I'm Erica, a mom, wife, and caregiver. I have been through the highs and lows of having a child with a medically complex background and special needs, all caused by epilepsy. I'm here to let you know you're not alone. There are so many resources out there, and that you too can and will come out on the other side stronger and more resilient than you ever imagined. It's not always easy, but I'm here for you. Welcome to the Parenting Epilepsy and Special Needs podcast. Welcome back. It's currently IEP season for a lot of us, and sometimes that can bring a lot of stress, anxiety, and emotions, especially for special needs moms, depending on the different experiences that they've had at IEP meetings. My husband and I have been extremely fortunate to partner with some amazing general education teachers, special education teachers, therapists, nurses, and one to one paras that all help our daughter make great strides in both academics and across all of her therapies. Our daughter is currently in middle school, and it's been a process. I never it's been a process that I will never take for granted, especially when we have a strong team who communicates with us and goes out of their way to ensure that our girl has all of the tools accessible to her to make progress and learn in ways that are best for her. I realize that it's not always like this for every parent and student. It's not easy when you have a weak link on your team who either doesn't believe in your child or isn't willing to take your advice on how to best work with them to help them succeed. I understand that. We've been there. I'm going to talk more about IEP meetings in future episodes. But today I want to share a conversation that I will never forget, that I am still grateful for to this day, almost a decade later. When my daughter was about to turn 3 years old, an amazing resource that was in our life at that time asked me if I was familiar with the IEP process and what school might look like when she started preschool. I will be honest, I had no idea. Prior to this, I only knew what I saw and learned of what school looked like from my two older daughters, which I now know is referred to as general education. I had a feeling that things might look a little different based on the fact that her history included infantile spasms and constant uncontrolled seizures, which had impacted her speech and the speed at which she learned. But I was confident that we would have support needed and we would figure it out. So I replied back, I'm glad you asked. I'm not really sure what to expect, but I would guess that we will have support as we work to help her get caught up, and learn skills of a typical preschooler. My friend paused and said, "Okay, I just want to be honest with you. School can be a bit different than what you've experienced up to this point in terms of, say, support from therapists, doctors, or even early intervention." And I do want to note that this person had gone through this with their own child. So I could quickly tell that they were trying to give me a heads up on something. And I'm going to refer to them throughout this episode as my friend, who shall remain nameless because I absolutely respect and love this human for everything that they've done to help our family. So, anyways, I asked a few more questions to further understand what they were trying to share. My friend began to explain the process of how my child would most likely be eligible to begin preschool at 3 years old within our school district, and that I would complete a ton of very detailed forms, paperwork, and questions about our daughter to ensure eligibility. I will be honest, I do not remember the sequence of events, but my friend advised to review everything in detail, question anything that doesn't seem accurate and remember that you, as the parents, are her best advocates. And you are a part of your daughter's education team and know her better than anyone. And I think she was basically trying to tell me that just in general, not just for preschool. Then they went on to explain that there will be a point where there are a lot of evaluations and that the results can sometimes be explained or reported in a way that is not always fun to hear or listen to. However, it's reported in this way to explain your child's needs to ensure that they receive the services that they need. I said, okay, great. Not really fully understanding at that time everything that this person was referring to, but I knew I was probably going to need this information down the road. So I stored this information away and knew that it would come in handy at some point in the future. Fast forward to a few months later. My daughter is enrolled in her first year of preschool within our school district, and everything seemed to be going okay. I would drop her off and pick her up. Her teachers were kind, and everything was going great. Next, we knew it was the holidays, and we were invited to our daughter's classroom to hear her and her classmates sing, play musical instruments, make a craft, and share a snack. I will never forget this moment. We walked into the classroom, sat down, and as the students began to perform, it didn't take too long to notice that my daughter was in a classroom with only children with a variety of complex, special, and medical needs. And I want to clarify this was prior to her having her hemispherectomy. So at this stage, her main diagnosis was epilepsy or seizures and a speech delay. That was it. She was 3. So she was still too young to really tell if there were full developmental delays and in what areas and any additional impacts. But I was crushed. I think we were crushed, my husband and I, not because of the other students surrounding her. They were adorable and everyone was working so hard. They were so cute. They did such a great job and they were full of life. We were crushed because as we sat there watching her, it hit us how this environment was not going to help her grow and improve in speech, the one area she needed the most help in at that time. At home, she imitated us and learned from our family. I also noticed a few of the children having some extreme temper tantrums, different behavioral things going on. Again, another light bulb went off. I had just saw our daughter doing that a few days before, and I recall thinking, this is strange. I've never seen her respond like this before. But now I knew where it was coming from and where she had picked it up. We let it go, which we quickly learned over time was not the thing to do, and we thought it would pass. The months went on, and we continued to notice unfavorable behaviors that were not part of our daughter's typical behavior prior to starting preschool. So, after talking about this with my husband, we were in full agreement that this was not the best environment for our daughter at this crucial stage in her life. I do want to note that our daughter was in a self contained classroom, which was not really fully explained to us of what that actually meant. Again, we learn as we go. And that conversation my friend had with me came back to me. And I knew at that moment it was time to take action. So I requested a meeting with our daughter's team. And even the way I did that kind of makes me laugh at this time, looking back, because specifically I just wanted to talk to her teacher because, well, that's all I knew from my 2 older girls. But I I met with them and I explained that while we appreciated all of the work that they were doing to help her learn and grow, that we were very concerned with some of the behaviors that she was picking up from other children in the classroom. And in addition, as I mentioned earlier, at that time, her main area of diagnosis was epilepsy and a speech delay. So my husband and I further explained that going into the following school year, that we requested that she be moved to a classroom with typically developing children to hopefully help her improve her speech based on hearing and learning from other kids around her, as well as hopefully learning more acceptable behaviors. I get no classroom is perfect, but it was definitely going to be worth a try. The teacher and team understood our concerns, and the following year, our daughter was placed in a general education preschool classroom where she still received her therapies and supports needed. This was the first of many, many, many more opportunities that we would have to advocate for our daughter. We had to do what was best for her at that time in her life and her schooling. She was only in preschool, and we were at a crucial point where we were trying to help her grow and make the most progress before she started kindergarten. I will be honest that until that year, I did not know the terms self contained classroom and general education classroom. These were terms that I had no knowledge of, but this was just the beginning of our journey in the special education world. Thankfully, for us, the following school year, we saw more progress. And also, the unfavorable behaviors that were learned quickly stopped and things were going well. The second half of that school year, our daughter had her hemispherectomy and was on a break from school from January until April. She had a pretty hefty outpatient therapy schedule as she recovered and returned back to school 1 to 2 days per week for April and May. Since she missed most of the second half of the school year, we discussed having her stay back in preschool for 1 more year instead of going to kindergarten as she continued to recover and progress. We had absolutely no idea what was ahead of us and coming our way that following school year. And boy, oh boy, was it an emotional roller coaster ride. But I will go into that in another episode. So, in closing, if your child is in the preschool phase of life and has either maybe epilepsy and a speech delay, or I don't know, I think the major point that I'm trying to get to is that they are still so young that I highly, highly recommend connecting with other parents who are familiar with your school district and how the special education process works, especially if you're not familiar with it. Talk to them, learn from them, get as much information as you can, because you never, ever can be too informed of what to expect as you transition from the infant and toddler years to preschool and the special education world. So, in closing, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I am so proud of you. I am here for you. I know that you're doing your best with everything that you have on your plate. Until next time, stay strong and believe in yourself. You are an amazing mama, and your child is lucky to have you. Please share this with someone who could benefit from hearing today's episode. Don't forget to write a review or rate this episode. It would mean the world to me and helps get the show out to other moms who need this. You can follow me on Instagram at parenting epilepsy _special needs. We'll see you on the next episode.